What's up, everybody? DocMayDiet Podcast today. Today's podcast is going to be about stress. So, if you know my story, if you listen to me for some time now, you know that the story goes that I lost my health when I got to chiropractic school. I was around 23 years old. I joined chiropractic college being a young, vibrant, healthy 23-year-old man. And then within 2.5 years, actually within a few months, I turned into an old, decrepit, broken down, miserable old man in a matter of months. And as you know, I changed my diet, I changed my lifestyle, and I got back to being that young man. But there's another component to that story that I haven't really told yet. So that's totally true, that story. I had to change my diet, I had to change my lifestyle in order to get those changes, to get my health back. But there's something else, and that has to do with stress. It was a very stressful time period of my life. I was in a very long distance relationship. It was a new relationship too. I was studying about 60 hours per week, completely obsessed with getting good grades. I had just lost my home that I grew up in. My mom had to sell the house. It was the home that was kind of the central hub and meeting place for me and all my friends. So I'm just stressed out to the max at this point. And I had to handle all of that. I had to end the long distance relationship. I had to stop obsessing and worrying about school so much, because on the outside, I looked like I was handling the stress well. You know, I was getting perfect grades, but it was getting to be too much. I was putting too much emphasis on it. And my body was breaking down. I had to come to terms with the fact that my home was gone forever. I had to get over that. And I had to do all these things. I had to manage and cope with that stress if I was going to dig myself out of that hell that I was in for 2.5 years of not being able to work out, not being able to play basketball, barely being able to walk up the steps without having pain, couldn't do a push-up without pain, couldn't do a squat without pain. I had to do all those things. I had to change my diet. I had to change my lifestyle. And for purpose of tonight's podcast, what I want to focus is the fact that I had to change and manage my stress as well, because stress will bring to the surface any disease process that is underlying. A lot of people are walking around out there and have something underneath the surface that could cause a problem. And times of stress and stressful periods of our lives will cause that stress to rise to the surface like a volcano. Otherwise, it's kind of just lying dormant. Now, you look at any disease, what's at the crux? What's at the core? Stress. Top killers in this country are heart disease, diabetes, cancer, kidney failure, weight gain. What do they all have in common? They're all diseases of stress. Heart disease, because excess stress on the coronary arteries is how heart disease develops. Cancer, because excess stress, those hormones that are produced in stress times like cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline, they'll actually not only stimulate tumor cell growth, but it will cause it to proliferate and go to other tissues. It will cause it to metastasize even quicker than it would normally. And then diabetes and kidney failure, because there's just too much stress on the pancreas or the kidneys, they can no longer perform their functions the way they should. And it doesn't end there. Other diseases, I'm going to list a few off here, like the common cold, asthma, infections, poor sleep, ulcers, headaches, depression, Alzheimer's, back pain, headaches, neck pain, shoulder pain, indigestion, fatigue, loss of sexual desire, amenorrhea, anxiety, insomnia, acne, autoimmune conditions, and weight gain. And the list goes on and on. And it's estimated that 75 to 90% of doctor-related visits are due to stress. That means they're preventable. So I actually go into great detail about how stress actually works with inside the body, the whole entire cascade of hormones that are released, how the body works, the pituitary, hypothalamus axis, all that stuff. I go into that in great detail in my online nutrition course, but for the purpose of tonight's podcast, let's just try and stick to the basics so I don't overwhelm you and we aren't here all night, okay? So stress is anything that's going to spike that fight or flight response in the body. And that causes, like I mentioned, a whole entire cascade of hormones to be released, namely cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and adrenaline. And stress is anything that the body perceives as a strain, and it could be subconscious or conscious. And that could be mental, physical, or emotional. Some common causes of stress would first be family stress. So that can be a death in the family, a falling out, financial stress, which could be, money issues, debt, struggling to put food on the table, personal issues like, not feeling good enough in your career, not happy with your weight, things like that. Anything that will cause loss of self-esteem, emotional issues such as loneliness, anxiety, depression, also career issues, like I mentioned, and then mental issues, which is the one we most think of, which is just being overwhelmed, too much on your plate, can't deal with it. And also physical issues as well, which is, disease, sickness, aging, things like that. All these things can be negative stressors, but not all stress is bad stress. There's such a stress known as good stress or eustress, EU stress. Things like that include, planning a vacation and traveling for that, striving towards a goal, spending time donating to charity, raising children, good, positive things, but they're stress. Exercise is a stress. Eating healthy can be a stress. And the goal is to have a good balance of the bad stress and the good stress, the EU stress. We're not meant to just lay on the couch and watch Netflix all day and not have any stressors, because as the old saying goes, pressure creates diamonds, right? But too much pressure will break those diamonds, and not enough, and we don't have that diamond shining. So we need to achieve that balance between good stress and bad stress if we're going to have a healthy life. So what are some of the things we can do now that we've identified the bad stresses to help reduce stress? Number one would be, like I mentioned, exercising. I don't even care what your exercise of choice here is at this point. I just want you to be exercised, whether it be swimming, walking, running, lifting weights, whatever the case may be, as long as it's decreasing the stress, getting you from that mental into that physical. Number two would be eating better, reducing your calories, reducing your processed foods, reducing your high carbohydrate foods that are going to spike that insulin, cause the stress hormones to be released even more, and then you're riding an insulin coaster all day long, which is only going to stress you out, cause more cortisol release, more stress in the kidneys, more stress in the pancreas, more inflammation to the heart. So exercise and diet go a long way into reducing stress. Some other things we could do that we don't really typically talk about on this podcast would be to meditate. Meditation has been shown to reduce stress and anxiety, reduce those hormones on a day-to-day basis. There's an app I like to use called Calm. There's also an app called Headspace. And last time I checked on Netflix, they actually have like a 10 or so episode series. It's an introduction course to meditation. It's called Headspace on Netflix. You can check that out as well. In addition to that, reading, I personally like to read a lot about Stoicism. The ancient Stoics were masters at dealing with stress. It's all about framing the situation that's happening. Is it happening to you? Is it happening for you? How can I use this? How can I, take this situation and then decide how to act? Doesn't need to influence how you act. You decide how you act. And Stoicism, the readings in there, the meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, really helps you deal with the day-to-day stress and turn it into a positive. So between meditation, reading Stoicism, that's number three. Number four would have to be improving sleep quality. So what are 5 quick things we do to improve sleep? Well, number one, don't have caffeine past 2 or 3 o'clock, and that time is variable depending on who you are. My time used to be 2 o'clock, pretty hardcore. Now I could kind of get away with it until about 3:15. Number two, try not to have anything to eat 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. That way you can actually digest, you can get in that parasympathetic, and you have a full, more relaxing, higher quality sleep as well. Number three would need to be trying to reduce artificial light, whether it be computer screens, TV screens, phones, tablets, laptops, whatever the case is. Try and reduce that artificial light near and around bedtime. Number four, keep your bedroom and bed for sleeping purposes only. Try not to lounge in there watching TV too long, and keep it really dark as well. You don't want any of that artificial sunlight getting in and that light from the outside, the street lights, things like that. And then number five, if 1 through 4 don't work, you could try supplementing with magnesium at night. About 500 to 1,000 milligrams. They've actually had studies that show up to 1,500 milligrams don't really have any deleterious effects on your health and actually can improve sleep quality, because magnesium is an overall relaxant, will help you relax. And then the fifth thing we can do to reduce stress would be quite simple. Just really try and spend time with some loved ones. It can be a cold, lonely world out there. And if we don't spend enough time with people who truly love us and truly care about us, we're not going to feel that connection. And that connection is so important, so primal in allowing us to feel healthy and feel relaxed and reduce that stress. So another personal anecdote, at one point in my life, I was living several states away, multiple thousand miles away from anybody that I truly cared about or truly cared about me. Now, I made some new friends along the way, but you can't really replace those deep connections. And I remember that whole entire time I was living there, not the whole entire time, after about, 6 or so months, have my arm above my head in the morning doing my hair, I would notice my arms would get numb and it gets so heavy that I'd have to let them down. And this would happen day after day after day after day. I kind of just got used to it. The one weekend I had family visiting, and I remember the next day after I picked them up from the airport that night and hung out with them and spent some time with them, that morning I was doing my hair and I had my head, or I had my arms above my head, and I'm doing my hair, and afterwards I realized, wow, my arm feels fine. It's not getting numb anymore. It's not getting heavy. So that just goes to show you that that time spent with loved ones really affects your stress levels, and the stress really impacts how you feel, which goes back to my original point. Stress will bring to the surface any underlying health issue that you may have. So, in review, the top 5 things we could do to help reduce stress. Number 1, exercise. Number 2, eat better, reduce calories, reduce carbohydrate, reduce processed food, reduce inflammatory food. Number 3, meditate, read Stoicism. Number 4, improve sleep. Number 5, spend time with loved ones. Okay, guys, thanks for listening. Again, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and I'll see you next week.